The courtroom buzzed with anticipation. Reporters filled the wooden benches, their pens poised over notepads, cameras ready to capture the moment. The case was unlike anything the American public had seen before. At the center of it all stood Elon Musk, billionaire entrepreneur, visionary, and CEO of Tesla and SpaceX. He adjusted his tie, his sharp blue eyes scanning the room. A small smirk played on his lips, betraying the confidence that had defined his career. Musk wasn't just fighting for himself today. He was standing against a corrupt legal system, a ruling so outrageously unjust that even his most vocal critics couldn't ignore it. The lawsuit had begun months earlier, filed by Zenith Global, a shadowy conglomerate with deep ties to government officials and financial elites. The corporation had accused Musk of monopolizing space innovation and obstructing competition, a claim so absurd it had sparked public outrage. Yet, despite the lack of evidence, the judge overseeing the case, Justice Roland Whitaker, had ruled in favor of Zenith. The verdict? A crippling $50 billion fine against Musk, the forced dissolution of SpaceX's assets, and a lifetime ban on Musk participating in space ventures. It was a blatant takedown, an attempt to cripple Musk and hand control of the space race to corporate and political elites. The ruling sent shockwaves through Wall Street, Silicon Valley, and Washington. Musk, however, wasn't going down without a fight. Instead of complying, he launched an appeal, and not just any appeal. He and his elite team of lawyers had uncovered a web of corruption behind the ruling, bribes, secret offshore accounts, and undisclosed relationships between Zenith executives and high-ranking government officials. Now, in the Federal Court of Appeals, Musk was about to reveal everything. The judge, Justice Helena Mercer, an iron-willed woman with a reputation for fairness, presided over the case. The courtroom fell silent as she took her seat. "All rise," the bailiff announced. Musk stood tall, adjusting his blazer. His top attorney, Jonathan Pierce, whispered, "You ready?" Musk grinned. "Oh, I'm just getting started." The battle for justice had begun. The tension in the courtroom was thick enough to cut with a knife. Justice Helena Mercer adjusted her glasses, her sharp gaze scanning the packed courtroom. Across from Elon Musk, the legal team representing Zenith Global, a team of high-priced, ruthless corporate lawyers, sat with smug expressions. They believed they had already won. Musk, however, had other plans. Jonathan Pierce, Musk's lead attorney, rose first. He was a seasoned litigator with a reputation for dismantling his opponents with precision. This case, however, was personal. "Your Honor," Pierce began, his voice steady. "This case is not about fair competition or legal oversight. It is about a calculated, corrupt attack on the one man who is revolutionizing space travel." The opposing attorney, Michael Luther, a corporate snake in a $3,000 suit, scoffed. "Objection, Your Honor. Counsel is turning this into a spectacle." Judge Mercer raised an eyebrow. "Overruled for now. But let's keep this factual, Mr. Pierce." Pierce nodded and continued. "Very well. Let's talk about facts." He turned to the jury, then back to the judge. He held up a stack of confidential documents. "We have uncovered damning evidence that Judge Roland Whitaker, who oversaw the initial case, had personal ties to Zenith Global's board members. We have bank statements proving direct payments to his offshore accounts." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The reporters frantically scribbled notes. Michael Luther shifted uncomfortably. "That's a baseless accusation." "Actually," Pierce interrupted, walking towards the judge's bench, "these documents come directly from a whistleblower inside Zenith. And that's not all." He clicked a remote control and a large screen behind him lit up. A leaked email exchange between Zenith Global's CEO, Gerald Vance, and Judge Whitaker appeared on the screen. "Vance, we need this case ruled in our favor. Make sure Musk is neutralized." Whitaker, "Consider it done. Payment should arrive in the usual place." The room erupted. The jury members whispered amongst themselves, clearly shaken. Musk leaned back in his chair, his trademark smirk growing wider. Judge Mercer narrowed her eyes at Luther. "Mr. Luther, do you care to explain why a sitting judge was taking payments from your client?" Luther's face turned red. "Your Honor, this is all circumstantial." Pierce cut him off again. "Let's move on, then. We also have a recording." He nodded to the technician. A distorted voice filled the courtroom, the whistleblower. "I worked at Zenith for 5 years. The entire lawsuit against Musk was a setup. They knew they couldn't beat SpaceX in competition, so they decided to use the courts to eliminate him. I personally saw emails ordering the bribing of Judge Whittaker. At that moment, Justice Mercer's expression hardened. She turned to Luther, her voice cold as ice. Mr. Luther, are you telling me that your clients had no knowledge of this corruption? Luther stammered. Your Honor, I was not aware of these documents. Then your client has a lot of explaining to do, Mercer said sharply. Musk finally spoke, his voice calm but cutting. Your Honor, I built SpaceX to push humanity forward, not to be taken down by corrupt corporations and dirty judges. This isn't just about me. It's about justice. The courtroom erupted once more. Zenith's case was falling apart, and Musk was just getting started. The courtroom was now in chaos. The revelation of bribes, offshore accounts, and secret deals had sent shockwaves through the room. The jury members whispered amongst themselves, and reporters could barely keep up as they typed furiously on their laptops. Zenith Global was cornered. Judge Mercer banged her gavel. Order. I will have order in this court. The murmurs died down, but the energy was electric. She turned to Michael Luther, Zenith's lead attorney, who was visibly sweating. Mr. Luther, I'm giving you one chance to respond to these allegations. Choose your words carefully. Luther wiped his brow, his voice shaking slightly. Your Honor, this is an outrageous ambush. The so-called evidence presented by Mr. Musk's team is unreliable. A whistleblower? Some stolen emails? None of this is verified. Jonathan Pierce, Musk's attorney, smiled. Oh, but we're just getting started. He gestured to an assistant who walked forward with a thick folder of new documents. Your Honor, I'd like to introduce Exhibit C, bank transfer records linking Zenith Global executives to shell companies registered in the Cayman Islands. These accounts were used to funnel millions of dollars directly to Judge Whittaker. The screen behind them changed again, now showing the flow of money from Zenith's offshore subsidiaries through multiple accounts and finally landing in the personal account of Judge Whittaker. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Judge Mercer leaned forward, her expression unreadable. Mr. Luther, I'd like to hear your explanation for this. Luther's hands clenched into fists. His eyes darted toward the back of the room where Zenith Global's CEO, Gerald Vance, sat with his lawyers. Vance's face was frozen in a mask of rage and panic. Luther cleared his throat. Your Honor, I need time to review this information before I can. No, Mercer cut in sharply. You had plenty of time. The documents presented here show a direct attempt to manipulate the legal system for corporate gain. That is not just unethical, it's criminal. At that moment, Elon Musk stood up. He smoothed his suit, took a slow breath, and spoke with calm authority. Your Honor, this entire case was designed to destroy me and SpaceX, not because we did anything wrong, but because we were winning. Because we were building the future. Zenith Global and their friends in government thought they could stop us. But I'll tell you what I tell my engineers, never bet against innovation. The jury nodded. Even some of the court officials looked inspired. Judge Mercer turned back to Zenith's legal team. At this point, the credibility of this lawsuit is completely shattered. I am strongly considering a motion to dismiss this case with prejudice and open a federal investigation into Zenith Global and Judge Whittaker. That's when it happened. From the back of the room, Gerald Vance snapped. This is a sham, he bellowed, slamming his fists on the table. The courtroom gasped as he stood, his face contorted in fury. Musk is a menace to the world. He thinks he's above the system, but he's the real villain here. Musk chuckled, shaking his head. I think the only villains here are the ones who got caught. Judge Mercer glared at Vance. Mr. Vance, sit down and remain silent, or I will have you removed. Vance, realizing his outburst had only made things worse, slowly lowered himself back into his chair, his hands shaking with rage. Judge Mercer exhaled. I will reconvene this court tomorrow for a final decision, but as of now, the evidence is overwhelmingly in favor of Mr. Musk. Court is adjourned. She slammed the gavel. The courtroom erupted, Musk's team exchanged victorious handshakes, while Zenith's lawyers looked like they had just seen a ghost. Musk turned to Jonathan Pierce and smirked. I'd say we're in orbit. They had exposed the corruption. Now, they just had to finish the fight. The next morning, the courtroom was even more packed than before. News channels ran nonstop coverage of the case, and social media was in a frenzy. Hashtag Musk versus corruption was trending worldwide. Zenith Global was on the defensive, but they still had one last trick up their sleeve. As soon as the court was called to order, Michael Luther stood up. Your Honor, we move to dismiss all evidence presented by the defense on the grounds that it was illegally obtained. The whistleblower's testimony was unauthorized and the leaked emails violate corporate privacy laws. Musk leaned back, shaking his head with a smirk. Typical. Jonathan Pierce, however, was ready. He stood confidently, addressing Judge Mercer. Your Honor, the evidence was obtained legally through anonymous sources who came forward to expose corruption. And as for the leaked emails, we verified their authenticity through independent forensic analysis. He gestured to the courtroom door. In fact, we have an expert witness who can confirm this. The door opened and a tall, bespectacled man in a dark suit entered. Dr. Samuel Grayson, a cybersecurity expert and former government investigator, took the stand. Pierce wasted no time. Dr. Grayson, can you confirm whether the emails linking Zenith Global to bribery are authentic? Grayson adjusted his glasses. Yes. I personally conducted forensic analysis on the documents. They are 100% legitimate. The timestamps, metadata, and encryption signatures all match. Luther's face paled. Your Honor, this is... Mercer cut him off. Mr. Luther, unless you can prove otherwise, I am accepting this evidence into the official record. A ripple of excitement ran through the courtroom. Musk grinned. Zenith was running out of options. And then the final nail in the coffin came. Judge Mercer leaned forward, her expression cold and authoritative. Mr. Luther, before I make my final ruling, I have one last question. Did Zenith Global knowingly bribe a sitting federal judge? Luther opened his mouth. Closed it. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His silence said everything. Finally, he sighed. Your Honor. I have no further arguments. Gasps. The jury members exchanged looks. The courtroom erupted into whispers. Judge Mercer nodded. Then my decision is final. She picked up her gavel. This court finds that the original ruling against Elon Musk was the result of corruption, bribery, and judicial misconduct. The case is officially dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, I am recommending immediate federal investigations into Zenith Global and all involved parties. Boom. The gavel came down. It was over. Musk had won. The courtroom exploded in applause, reporters rushing to break the news. Zenith's legal team looked destroyed, their empire crumbling before their eyes. Elon Musk stood up, straightened his suit, and turned to Jonathan Pierce. You know, he said with a smirk, I think I'm going to tweet about this. Pierce laughed. Make it a good one. Musk pulled out his phone and typed. Justice served. Corrupt institutions fall. The future is ours to build. Rocket. The crowd cheered, knowing they had just witnessed history. But Musk? He was already thinking about Mars. The courtroom doors swung open as Elon Musk stepped outside, greeted by a wall of flashing cameras and cheering supporters. The world had watched as he took on the corrupt system and won. Reporters swarmed him, microphones stretched out, voices overlapping in excitement. Mr. Musk, how do you feel about today's ruling? What's your response to Zenith Global's downfall? Do you think this case will change corporate corruption in America? Musk smirked, adjusting his blazer before speaking. Today wasn't just a win for me or SpaceX. It was a win for everyone who believes in fairness, innovation, and the future. Corruption tried to stop progress, but progress always wins. The crowd erupted in applause. As Musk turned to leave, his phone buzzed. A text from Jonathan Pierce. Breaking news, federal authorities just raided Zenith Global HQ. Executives are being arrested. Whitaker is facing criminal charges. Musk chuckled, sliding his phone back into his pocket. Zenith Global had fallen. The fallout. Within days, the consequences of the trial sent shockwaves through Wall Street and Washington. Zenith Global's stock price plummeted by 90%, investors abandoning ship. Federal agents raided multiple offices, uncovering a massive web of corporate fraud and bribery beyond just Musk's case. Judge Whitaker was arrested, charged with judicial misconduct, accepting bribes, and obstruction of justice. And the best part? SpaceX was stronger than ever. Within a week, Tesla and SpaceX stock skyrocketed. Investors saw what Musk had done, defied the system, exposed corruption, and emerged victorious. The public rallied behind him, and suddenly, more people than ever believed in Musk's vision. One last move. Sitting in his office at Starbase, Texas, Musk watched the news as footage of Zenith executives being led away in handcuffs played on the screen. Jonathan Pierce sat across from him, grinning. I have to admit that was one hell of a show. Musk smirked. Yeah, but I'm not done yet. Pierce raised an eyebrow. Oh. Musk pulled out his phone and fired off a final tweet. We took down corruption on Earth. Now it's time to build the future beyond it. Mars, here we come. Rocket. The internet exploded. Within hours, the tweet racked up millions of likes, retweets, and global headlines. The message was clear. Elon Musk had won the battle. Now he was ready to win the future. Mars was next.